There is a bird in your yard that knows your schedule better than most of your neighbors do, not because it has reasoned its way to that knowledge, and not because it has formed any conscious awareness of you as a person, but because it is a highly vigilant animal living its entire life within a small territory, and you are one of the most significant and consistent features of that territory. Every time you stepped outside this past year, it registered. Every morning you walked to the mailbox, every afternoon you spent on the porch, each of those moments was processed, categorized, and added to a behavioral record it has been quietly building on you for as long as it has been coming to your yard. And there is a specific signal you can give it, one most people never give, not because they don't care, but because they don't know it exists, that would measurably change how that bird treats you. To understand what that signal is and why it works, you first have to understand what the bird has already done with all of those observations. Take a male northern cardinal that has been coming to your feeders for 2 or 3 years. Over that time, he has observed you hundreds of times, not in passing, in detail. Songbirds like cardinals are not building the kind of individual profiles that members of the corvid family build. Research has confirmed that crows can learn specific human faces, remember whether those individuals posed a threat, and communicate that information to other crows. That level of individual face recognition requires a cognitive architecture found almost exclusively in corvids. Cardinals work differently. What they build is something researchers describe as a presence profile, a detailed read of your typical movements, your gait, the rhythm of your daily routine, the acoustic quality of your voice when it drifts through an open window. The cardinal almost certainly cannot distinguish your face from your neighbor's face the way a crow could. But he can absolutely distinguish your overall presence pattern, the specific combination of timing, movement, and sound that has accompanied him through hundreds of mornings in that yard. And over all of those observations, he has almost certainly filed you under the same category he places most non-threatening regular humans: safe presence. That categorization is not a small thing. It is the foundation of every interaction you have had with him. If you are new here, subscribe before we go further. A new video goes up every week, built for people who want to understand what is actually happening in the natural world just outside their door. Here is what most people miss: that categorization is not fixed. It is not a decision the bird made once and sealed. Birds continuously run threat assessments on every feature of their environment, and that includes the regular humans. Every time you appear, the cardinal is running a rapid, largely automatic calculation. Is this still what I expect? Has anything changed? Is the risk model I have built on this person still accurate? Most of the time, the answer is no. You move the same way at roughly the same times, with the same patterns of behavior. The file stays as it is. You remain tolerated background presence, but that file can be updated, and there are specific actions on your part that will move it consistently and measurably in a direction that changes the bird's behavior toward you. That movement from tolerated background presence to something researchers describe as individually recognized low risk is what people are actually referring to when they say a wild bird has warmed up to them. It is real, it is measurable, and it is grounded entirely in behavioral science rather than in anything as uncertain as animal emotion. One of the most important mechanisms behind this shift is gaze, specifically where your eyes are directed and for how long. A study published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society examined how European magpies responded to humans who either looked directly at them or deliberately averted their gaze. The results were consistent and clear. Magpies allowed humans who were not looking at them to approach significantly closer before flushing. When a human maintained a direct stare, birds flushed at greater distances. The birds were not simply monitoring whether a human was present, they were actively monitoring whether that human's attention was focused on them. This gaze sensitivity has been documented across dozens of species, not just corvids, because the reason for it reaches back far beyond corvid intelligence. Every visual predator on Earth locks its eyes onto prey before striking. Direct, sustained gaze is, by evolutionary default, the behavioral signal that precedes an attack. Birds that failed to track human eye direction left fewer descendants. Every individual standing in your yard today is the product of a very long line of animals that got this calculation right. This is precisely what makes a brief, soft acknowledgement so meaningful from a behavioral standpoint. A 2-second glance directed loosely toward the bird, followed by your eyes moving naturally away, does not activate the predator-focused response. What it does instead is register as information the bird has not previously recorded from you. Most humans either ignore birds entirely or stare too long. Both of those patterns have already been logged. A new pattern, brief, calm attention with no threatening follow-up, is something the bird's threat assessment system must actively process and incorporate into the existing profile. That processing is what people observe as a bird responding to them. It is not imagination. The system is working exactly as designed. Voice operates on the same principle. Research on house sparrows published in the journal Animal Cognition demonstrated that sparrows learn to associate specific human voices with specific outcomes: food, threat, or neutral presence. Your voice is something the bird in your yard has heard many times, through windows, through conversations on the porch, but it has almost certainly never heard you direct that voice toward it. At the quiet, unhurried register that carries the acoustic signature of social communication rather than alarm. Soft, low vocalization with no sudden volume or sharpness, delivered while you are already still, gets processed as a different category of interaction than anything the bird has previously recorded from you. The cardinal does not understand your words. What it reads is the acoustic profile, the absence of aggression in the tone, the calm directional attention, the lack of any threatening behavior that follows. When the brief glance and the quiet voice occur together, researchers studying long-term bird-human interactions have documented a consistent response. The bird notices. It freezes briefly for a fraction of a second. It tilts its head. It looks back. It is worth being accurate about what is happening in that moment, because the instinctive interpretation tends to get the science wrong. The freeze is not recognition in the emotional sense. The bird is recalculating its flight distance because you broke your established pattern. You stopped rather than continuing past, and the deviation must be assessed. The head tilt is not acknowledgement in return. Birds have laterally placed eyes and tilt their heads to bring one eye forward into sharper focus on whatever requires a closer read. What the bird is doing is precisely what the movement looks like. It is getting a better look at what just changed. What the bird is doing, in other words, is gathering data. But that data gathering is itself confirmation that your action registered. The bird has flagged you as different from the previous 1,000 interactions, and that flag is what eventually moves the file. What follows a single moment of registration, if you continue doing this consistently, is where the lasting behavioral shift happens. Birds that experience repeated, calm, low-threat interactions with a specific human show measurable changes in behavior over time. They allow closer approach. They return to feeders more reliably when that person is present. They reduce their alarm call frequency in response to that person's movements. The bird is not forming affection in any human sense of the word. It is revising its risk model. But the practical outcome, a cardinal who stays on the fence post while you fill the feeder rather than retreating to the far end of the yard, is entirely real. And it is something you directly control. The time scale here carries more weight than most people think about. A black-capped chickadee in the wild lives an average of 2.5 years, though some individuals reach 11. A northern cardinal averages 3 years, though records exist of individuals living to 15. An American robin averages 2 years, with some reaching 13. These are short lives spent in a state of nearly continuous vigilance. Every day a bird spends in your yard represents a meaningful fraction of its total existence. The chickadee that has been visiting your feeder for 2 years has been visiting it for most of its life. Every morning and every afternoon throughout that span, it has been running the same calculations, assessing threats, monitoring resources, updating its read of everything in the territory. You are, whether you have considered it in these terms before, one of the most significant and consistent presences in that animal's existence. There are documented cases, found almost entirely in research on corvids, of birds maintaining what appears to be a vigil at locations long after the humans connected to those places stopped appearing. Crows returning for weeks to spots where a regular caregiver used to feed them. Individual birds remaining at locations that had become meaningful to them long after the circumstances that made them meaningful had changed. It would be inaccurate to extend this directly to cardinals and sparrows and robins. The cognitive and social complexity behind those corvid behaviors is not present in most songbirds. But what is present across nearly every species that lives in proximity to humans is the capacity to track a specific individual, develop a detailed behavioral profile of that individual, and update that profile in measurable ways based on what that individual does. In practical terms, here is what all of this means for you tomorrow morning. If a bird has been visiting your yard for any length of time, you are already part of its working map of the territory. The file exists. The question is only which direction it moves from here. Go outside tomorrow when you would normally fill the feeder. Do it as usual. But before you go back in, stop. Find whatever bird is already there, and there will almost certainly be one because birds learn feeding schedules and position themselves ahead of the replenishment. Look at it, briefly, 2 seconds. Not a stare, a soft, easy kind of attention that doesn't lock in and doesn't demand anything. Say something quietly at whatever low register feels natural to you. Then look away, go on with your morning. If you do this consistently for a week, the behavioral shift will be observable. Closer approach tolerance, longer stays while you are present. A measurable reduction in the alarm response your appearance used to trigger. Within a month, the dynamic between you and that bird will be genuinely different. To a cardinal living 3 years within a small territory, the difference between treating a yard as a place of constant vigilance and treating it as a place with a known low-risk human is a real difference in the quality of its daily life. Less time in alarm, more time feeding and resting, a lower baseline level of stress throughout the day, sustained across what may be most of its entire lifespan. You can be the reason that shift happens. It requires 2 seconds and costs you nothing. For the small life that has been quietly building a record on you all this time, it is not a small thing at all. If there is a specific bird in your yard you have started to recognize as an individual, or if you have ever stopped to acknowledge one and noticed a shift in how it behaved afterward, leave a comment below. I read every one. Subscribe if you are not already. There is a new video every week.